In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos scouting report for week 8 of the 2021 CFL season. And with the Argos hosting a pivotal East matchup this week, hosting the Montreal Alouettes, I thought who better to bring in than TSN Radio's Joey Alfieri. And so he joins us today. Joey, thanks so much for doing this for me today.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, do you have David Cote in your fantasy football lineup for this week?
I still haven't made my lineup. I know there's a Ticats Red Blacks game tonight. Kind of snuck up on me, to be honest with you. But no, I don't have not this week, and I haven't had him in my fantasy lineup all season actually. So I didn't take advantage of the 6 field goals on Saturday night either.
That was something else. And what's funny about that game is, watching that game, I didn't get a sense of what I ended up seeing on the stat sheet the next day. So next morning I tune in and, I kind of had a feeling that the Owls weren't moving the ball that well, but the stats don't say that at all, do they?
They did. I thought they moved the ball real well. Like between the 20s, they moved the ball okay. I mean, William Stanback ripped off like over 7 yards a carry. Vernon Adams moved the ball relatively well, but it's just, in the red zone and even I would say around the 30-yard line, just for whatever reason, they would stall. There's a couple of reasons for that. Adams threw a really bad interception on their first offensive drive. They were already down 7-0 at that point, and he threw a terrible pick to TJ Lee in the end zone. And then there was some drops, in fairness to Adams. There were also drops near the goal line. Geno Lewis had a couple. So there's multiple reasons why they didn't score last week. But they almost had 500 yards of net offense, which to me, I'm like, all right, I get it. I can see that, but it's just they didn't pay it off. They didn't end these drives with positive results.
Yeah, and it's something that reminded me a little bit of what we saw with the Toronto-Saskatchewan game, where after the game, a lot of people on social media were giving Nick Arbuckle a really hard time. I thought he actually played a pretty good game. And then I look at that Montreal game, I actually thought Vernon Adams was okay. It wasn't the best game of his career or anything, but he was all right. I thought his decision-making was pretty good. You would expect just more points to result in that level of play, but it just wasn't there. So what's the mood been around, Montreal this week? Is everyone panicking? Are people pushing the panic button? How's the spirit?
I don't think people are panicking just yet, but I think it's starting to get frustrating because, you have to keep in mind the Owls have been mediocre for quite a while now. They had that great stretch run in 2014 when Jonathan Crompton took over at quarterback, and they went on this run and they lost in the East Final. But you look at what they've had the last few years. I mean, it's been different quarterbacks, different coaches, different general managers. So you go into 2019. And most people aren't expecting much. Like Mike Sherman's the head coach to start training camp. Antonio Pipkin's the starting quarterback. And by the first week of the season, Vernon Adams is the starting quarterback and Kahari Jones is your head coach. So everything's changed, but they got positive results. They won a lot of games. They won 10 games in 2019, made the playoffs. So you're expecting them to make that next step, even though, it was tough to not have a season last year and build on that momentum from 2019. So I don't think people are pushing the panic button. I think there's a little bit of frustration because they've been waiting for a while to see a good team. You finally thought that you had that, and now, it looks like you're kind of middle of the pack again.
It looks like, and speaking of Kahari Jones, he's back with the team, I gather, this week. Mm-hmm. And Mario Alfred is out, which I think is maybe a bigger deal than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, Mario Alfred, I know it's been a little more quiet the last few weeks, but Mario Alfred, the first game of the season, broke a long return for a touchdown, and he's somebody that you have to account for. Since he's been with the Owls, he joined them midway through 2019. He's been dynamic. Before the year, I threw it out there on Twitter. I said that he is my pick to win Special Teams Player of the Year. And I know that, there's other guys in contention there, i.e., Frankie Williams, Devontae Dedmon as well. They're all in the mix. But to me, he's a guy who's dynamic. And it's been frustrating because one of the things that I kind of noticed over the last few weeks, and it's funny you bring up Alfred, is that I feel like the receivers that the Owls have are good. They have good receivers, good possession guys who can, hang on to the ball, even though, there were a couple of drops in the last game. I felt like they were missing speed. So to me, watching them play in Ottawa, there was one jet sweep to Mario Alfred, but then the rest of the time he was a decoy. On Saturday night, he was a decoy whenever he got on the field offensively, didn't get the ball in his hands. And for a team lacking speed, and I'm not saying you got to throw him out there at receiver and have him run routes, but I'm just saying you have to get him out there, get the ball in his hands, and have the defense worry like, hey, if we're not ready for this guy's going to burn us for a long game going the other way. And now they've lost that. So they've got Rashard Ross. He's an NFL vet. He bounced around the league. He's 31, played with the Washington football team for a while. So it looks like he's going to be able to return kicks starting Friday night. But it's definitely, you're right, it's definitely a big loss.
Where are you expecting the offense to come from in this matchup? I know the Toronto defense got beat up pretty badly last week, and there were injuries all over the place, a linebacker especially. Is this going to be the game plan coming in, run the ball, give it to Stanback, see what he can do?
Yeah, I think that's always, Montreal is old school that way in that, I feel like they use the run to kind of open up the pass. And I know before last week's game, I think Toronto was number 1 in the league against the run, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm not sure where they shake out after last week, but I think it's going to be tough to run on Oakman and company and those guys, So at the same time, I do feel like run blocking is something that this offensive line does well. It's not to say they're poor in pass blocking either, but they look comfortable opening up holes for Stanback. So as much as Stanback is, he's a fast guy for his size, he can run you over, the holes are there. So there's no doubt in my mind, like the game plan to limit Montreal's offense, you want to take away the big play. You want to make sure they don't beat you over the top because they do like to go for the kill shot a lot. The quarterback's Twitter handle is Big Play VA, for goodness sakes. And they want to run the ball effectively. And BC didn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the run at all, but they were still able to limit things in the red zone. But if you want to stop this Montreal offense, I think that's what you got to do. You want to force Vernon Adams to go on these long, extended drives because I'm not sure he's shown that he's capable of going on those long drives and scoring and finishing with touchdowns.
And where do you think where's the soft spot of that Als defense? I was trying to, going back and look at the last couple of games. I don't feel like there was no single area that stood out where I thought, well, that's probably where Toronto's going to target things. How do you beat the Als? Where do you score points?
Yeah, look, honestly, I think they're a solid defense. I really think they are. I know there's a couple of games here and there where they've kind of given up points and stuff, but I feel like a lot of those times it's the offense that's kind of let them down in that sense. Like even the BC got some late points there, and they were points off turnovers as well late in that game. But Montreal held them to under 30. They were under 20 for a while, and so to me, I don't know that there's one area where you can exploit this team. I thought if you look at what happened in 2019, their biggest need was pass rush help. They were last in the league in sacks, and Trevor Harris picked them apart in the East semifinal in 2019 at home. So you had time to drop back and throw. Now you don't necessarily have that time. Antonio Simmons has made plays, and Armando Sewell has been as advertised. I know he's a guy in his mid-30s, been in the league for a decade, but he commands a lot of double teams, and it opens things up for the other defensive tackles like Mike Wakefield and Woody Barron. And the only guy I would say needs to kind of step up a little bit is Nick Usher. He's a guy that was one of the big free agent acquisitions that they've brought in. He was a guy who was in the NFL for a little bit, had some good seasons out in Edmonton. He's in his mid-20s. He's a young guy still, but he just, forget the sack total. He hasn't brought that pressure off the edge consistently enough. So I don't know that there's one specific way to beat this Als defense.
So all the guys you named are players that most Toronto fans are really familiar with. But for fans that have not been following the Als week to week this year, can you give us a name of someone that maybe they'll see on their television screens on Friday night and say, wow, I don't know who that is, and I'm really impressed? Who maybe jumps out?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the middle linebacker, Ahmad Thomas. He missed a game, but he's come in, and I feel like he's done a real good job. He's adjusting to the Canadian game. He's a rookie. He's a guy who played strong safety at University of Oklahoma. So they brought him in to replace Enoch Mwamba. They've swapped the ratio there. So they're using an American middle linebacker since Enoch Mwamba left for Toronto. So I think that's a guy that you probably want to keep an eye out on for sure. And offensively, it's the similar cast of characters. Like, I know it's his second year. He had a good year in 2019, but I think Jake Wienecke's a star in this league. And if you're not really paying attention to Jake Wienecke, then that's on you, because he's not going to beat you with speed, but he's a big dude, good possession receiver. He's got good hands. And when they get into the red zone, I'd make sure that you keep an eye on number 9, because when they're having success there, and I don't even think they went to him in the end zone at all in the last game against BC. They used him more in the middle of the field. But when they need a score, they go to the sure hands of Jake Winneke. He's having a very good second season so far.
Yeah, he's always open, and it's one of those things where I don't quite know how he's always open. Like, you look at his measurables, and he's just such an unassuming looking guy, and somehow he's just wide open. He's a great route runner. He's got really good instincts for where to stop in the void, and I think Vernon Adams is learning to look his direction. Maybe missed him last week, but I think Argos fans are a little nervous this week, because how many weeks in a row are you going to hold Vernon Adams out of the end zone? That's one is a lot. So we'll see if it can happen this week too. Last question before we go into a prediction. I know Enoch Muamba is really hoping to play this week. I don't think it's going to happen. We haven't heard an official word yet. His hamstring's not in good shape right now. We'll see. But what's the sentiment around Montreal regarding him? Because he's having another terrific season for the Argos.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of confusion in the offseason. And I think, I'm guessing here, I'm obviously not in the front office, but just talking to different people around the team, it certainly seems like they felt like the tackle number might have been inflated for Enoch Muamba. Maybe they felt like, some of the guys playing outside linebacker, guys like Patrick Levels and Chris Aki, who both signed in Ontario in 2020 in free agency, Aki with Toronto and Levels with Hamilton. They both came back. Ironically enough, they're both starting for Montreal now, linebacking core, but maybe they felt like those guys were kind of funneling things into the middle, and Enoch Muamba was kind of cleaning up the mess. But I think Muamba wanted to stay, and I think it was really an Al's decision to go in a different direction and maybe go a little bit cheaper at middle linebacker. I honestly have nothing bad to say about Enoch. Just getting to know the guy over the last couple of years and seeing how involved he is in the community and how productive he was on the field. I mean, for goodness sake, he's the outstanding Canadian in the league in 2019. So he's a guy that I think Alouettes fans, they missed the personality, they missed the player on the field. But I think in terms of the job that the replacement, Ahmad Thomas, even Trey Watson has done as a young American linebacker, I don't think they've necessarily missed him as much on the field. That's not to say that he wouldn't be able to do a great job had he stayed in Montreal. It's just that, they went younger, they went cheaper, and they figured that they'd allocate more money on the defense to the front four, and they've been able to get after the quarterback with a little bit more regularity.
So how's this game going to go down? So good news for Montreal fans. I've predicted a 28-14 Toronto win, so that almost guarantees Montreal a win based on my record. How do you think this one's going to turn out?
Yeah, I'm really torn, man. Like, I really think that I think the Argos bounce back, to be honest with you. And I think this game was close. I mean, you look at the spread, it's essentially a pick 'em. I saw it was at minus a point and a half for the Argos. It went up to 2.5. But and that's how I see it. I think it's going to be a really close game. But if I look at Montreal's, just their record this year, they're 2-3. They beat Edmonton in week 2. Look, you can only beat who's in front of you. So I'm not trying to pile on the Als. That's not what I'm doing. But Montreal beat an Edmonton team in week 2. They were a total disaster in that game. Like, Edmonton absolutely no-showed, and credit to Montreal. They took advantage. But keep in mind that Edmonton team lost the week before to Ottawa. So Edmonton was total disarray. They beat an Ottawa team in Ottawa. They put up 50 points plus on Ottawa, which is, listen, no small feat in this league. But again, like, Ottawa is a disaster as well. So the good teams that they've played, and I don't even consider Calgary a good team, but they blew a 14-3 lead in Calgary. And I think Calgary's decent when Bo Levi's healthy. They couldn't get it done against Hamilton, who I think is a good team. And they didn't get it done against BC, who I think is a team that's good in the same level as the Als are. That's how I feel. And so they haven't really beat a quote-unquote good team yet. And I think the Argonauts are a good team. So I think it's going to be tight. And I know the Als are 2-1 on the road, but I do think that the Argos pull it off this week.
Joey, before you go, tell the good people where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, man, you can find me on Twitter at Joey Alfieri. Very easy find there. I'm on Instagram as well at Joey_Alfieri. And if you listen to TSN 690 radio in Montreal, you're bound to hear me talk Als, soccer, or hockey at some point. But the Canadian Football League is my true passion, so I try to slide in as much CFL talk as I possibly can.
Joey, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
On behalf of Joey Alfieri, my name is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.